Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on SABC News. The Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, Barbara Creecy, jointly with the Presidential Climate Commission, will host a national stakeholder consultation today ahead of the upcoming Sharm El Sheik International Climate Talks next month. For more, we now cross to our international news editor, Sophie Mugwena. Very good afternoon to you, Sophie.
Thank you, Flo. Indeed, we are coming live here in Midrand, where the minister responsible for negotiations in terms of COP27 in Egypt next month is engaging stakeholders on South Africa's position, but not only South Africa's position going to COP27, also the Africa position, as you are aware that Africa has taken a decision to speak in one voice. Minister, good afternoon. Quite a very robust discussion here. You took a decision to engage the stakeholders. What did you have in mind?
Well, South Africa always receives a negotiating mandate from Cabinet. Today we were sharing that negotiating mandate with, I think there were almost 300 people between in the room and online. Obviously, we wanted to get a sense what those who are involved in the climate space see as being the major issues. And I think we were very pleased to see that there's quite a lot of synergy between our thinking and the thinking of stakeholders. All of us feel very strongly that there has to be greater availability of climate finance to help developing countries implement both adaptation and mitigation measures, that climate finance can't add to the indebtedness of countries, and that means that ultimately there will need to be reform of the multilateral development banks. A lot of agreement that climate justice has to form the basis of any transition, and those who are in vulnerable sectors and industries and their communities cannot be left behind and have to be an active part of any transition process. And then, of course, a great belief that I think really stems from our own experience that climate change is part of our lived reality, a great belief that adaptation has to receive equal attention at COP. By adaptation, we mean living with the inevitable results of climate change, floods, droughts, wildfires, heat waves, and so on.
Minister, you spoke about the current political and the security situation around the world, looking at the war in Ukraine. When you were in Glasgow, you didn't have this problem, and clearly it's likely to affect the talks there. You made a passionate plea to the developed countries not to renege on what they agreed on in Glasgow last year. What are your concerns?
Well, I think that first of all, we all understand that developed countries and their use of fossil fuels over the last 200 years has created the buildup of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that is resulting in climate change today. We also understand that the African continent has contributed less than 4% to this accumulation of greenhouse gases. So clearly we believe that those who have caused the problem must be in the forefront of solving the problem. And we don't want to see a situation where, on the one hand, developed countries are pushing developing countries to reduce emissions at great cost to the developmental trajectories of developing countries, and on the other hand, see developed countries themselves going back to fossil fuels. So we believe that developed countries must stick to their climate commitments, and we don't want to see a situation where they're pushing their responsibilities onto developing countries.
On the issue of adaptation, what are the issues that you want the summit to focus on? I mean, we saw what happened in KZN recently, the floods. The floods now in Nigeria, Africa is not immune.
Absolutely. And what we understand is that in developing countries, there are minimal budgets available, there are great development needs. And when one of these catastrophic climate events happens, it can set back development and human living standards by years. We want to make sure that adaptation receives equal financing. And we want that financing to be based on real needs, not on a thumbsuck number. We also believe that there needs to be clear global goals around adaptation. So just as we have a goal that says we're trying to keep global temperature increases to well below 2 degrees on average above pre-industrial times, so we need a global goal on adaptation that says by 2030 we're going to increase the climate resilience of developing countries by 50% and by 90% by 2050. That is what we mean when we say adaptation must receive equal attention with mitigation.
Thank you so much, Minister, for your time. I know that we will continuously engage the team that is going to COP27 ahead of this important gathering in Egypt. That was the Minister unpacking what South Africa wants to put forward at this important gathering next month in Egypt. We know that many countries are affected, and South Africa is not immune, including other countries on the continent. The issue of the drought in the Horn of Africa and many people and animals dying. We know that in countries such as Kenya, Ethiopia, it is a serious challenge, the issue of drought. Back to you, Flo.
All right. Thank you very much. They are international news editor Sophie Mokoena in conversation with Barbara Creecy, the Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, on the back of the hosting a national stakeholder consultation today ahead of the upcoming Sharm El Sheik International Climate Talks, which will happen next month. We'll certainly have that live for you here on SABC News.